1.3 Lagos Talks. It is 4:34, and apologies for starting behind schedule. Time for us to take a look at happenings in the sphere of human resource management. We have our experts that come in on a weekly basis on times like this, 4:30 till 5, talking about issues that pertain to career advancement and career progression, and how you can be more adapted to the new age of workplace culture. Basically, this is The Office, and you know that The Office is proudly brought to you by the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria, at the CIPM, and Lagos Talks 91.3 FM. Now, we have our guests this evening, and we'll be talking about leadership. You know, think about reimagining leadership, leading in a boundaryless world. 2024, I mean, we've come a long way. And I mean, I think there's now a spatial there's a spatial marker or some sort that you can allude to the COVID-19 period. So a lot of people who are in the workplace environment or in the business of management refer to post-COVID-19. A lot of things have happened post-COVID. But today we will talk about reimagining leadership. Now, leading in a boundaryless world. And we have our guest this evening, and he is someone with over 19 years of experience. He has worked as a trainer, facilitator, consultant, advisor in the fields of human resources and business management. His expertise lies in applying practical knowledge of HR practices and translating theories into functional tools for business enhancement. Now, Leslie is his name, MCIPM. Leslie George, MCIPM, is a lead consultant with Horizon Boone Limited. Throughout his career, he has been involved in skills delivery, helping companies and individuals adapt their workforce to the ever-changing corporate landscape. Now, his roles have included head of manpower development and group head of human resources. Now, notably, he has provided training and advisory services for various organizations, including Union Registrars, First Bank, Nigeria Schools Conference, Media International Limited, USAID's Office of Transition Initiative, as the OTI, Access Bank, the Federal Government of Nigeria, Nigeria Ports Authority, FIRS, 9 Mobile, Leadway Assurance, Credit Direct Limited, that's a subsidiary of FCMB, Lafarge, ARM Life, Gas Tunneling Limited, Champion Breweries PLC, Inagbe Resort, Lagboss Limited. The list goes, it's endless. Keystone Bank, China, Europe International Business School, MRS, and the list is just endless, literally. I'm talking about someone who has done this and has been around for a while. Permit me in welcoming, of course, please join me in welcoming Leslie George, MCIPM. Mr. Leslie, good to have you join us. Good evening to you.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
All right, fantastic. I mean, if we had continued with your profile, and before we even finish with I mean, it's a you this evening. Welcome to the office.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right. All right. So today we're talking about leadership, reimagine leadership, leading in a boundaryless world. Not much time, so we're going to make the time that we have. But quickly, let's dive into the deep. Tell us about the concept of boundaryless leadership and why is it increasingly important in today's globalized landscape?
Okay. First thing, the world has changed. The workplace, the global workplace, as we would like to call it, has changed. And I think a little before COVID till right now, the transition and the transformation has been drastic. So when we talk about boundaryless or borderless, we are making reference to take, for example, a boundaryless organization would be one that breaks down the traditions, one that breaks down traditions, location constraints, hierarchies of more traditional company structures. That's basically what that is. Employees at this type of organizations can expect a flexible business environment and a team of co-workers that transcend geographical boundaries. So when you have a leader that is in what you describe as a boundaryless organization, these are the kind of things you'll expect him to do or her to do. The thinking is going to be different because it's going to be how do we move from the traditional? How do we actually transcend borders and boundaries? Basically, that's the idea. That's what a boundaryless organization is. And like I said, because the nature of work has changed and the global workplace has changed, we are looking at how we can create effective organizations across nations, across whatever the constraints used to be. Whatever the constraints used to be. For example, now you're talking about virtual, we have virtual denizens and virtual workers, people who are employed in Nigeria, but then they're in Canada or they're in the UK or they're in Japan, that kind of thing. And it's basically what we describe as borderless organizations. So when you think of borderless leadership, this is the kind of thing that should come to mind. The people who lead this kind of organizations or who lead in this kind of organizations.
All right. It's becoming increasingly popular to have companies recruit talents from across the globe. Of course, tech, the internet has made the world a global village. You know, you could literally have conferences. We're doing this. This is an example of what we're talking about. You could as well have been in Antarctica or something doing this with me on the show this evening. It's an example of what obtains right now, especially post-COVID, when we came to that realization that work could continue regardless of the location of the talents. But what would you say are the characteristics, or should I say traits, that can define an effective boundaryless leader, someone who has to manage talent regardless of where they're located? And how do they differ from the traditional leaders from pre-COVID?
Okay. The boundaryless leader is going to have to be a leader that is not thinking, how do I say it? He's not thinking here and now. He's thinking everywhere and all the time. He's what we'll describe as a 24/7 leader. Another thing is, when we talk about the traditional constraints or the constraints for traditional organizations or traditional leadership, it will be, where is this person? How can we tell where this person is? How can we tell what this person is doing? And it becomes imperative that the kind of leader that exists in the boundaryless world has to be one that his thinking transcends location, so to speak. It will be one that his thinking transcends whether it is race, whether it is just like I said, just think of all the regular constraints that we would have if we were working with people outside where we are. So that leader has to be one that is a critical thinker, has to be one that is a problem solver, has to be one who sees beyond, like I said, the here and the now. If you are leading people across the globe, you're what we describe as a 24/7 leader. And a 24/7 leader has to be one that is adaptive, constantly adaptive, not just adaptive, constantly adaptive, because a lot of things are going to change. He's going to have to be the kind of leader that is thinking policies across regions, not just policies in, for example, like in Nigeria. No, policies across regions. And in having to think that, he's going to constantly think, how can we apply this? How can we do this? How can we take this task here and do it there, or perform it there, or have someone perform it there? So he's going to be a person who is constantly reimagining and reinventing what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. He's going to be what we describe as an open-minded leader, one who is thinking, I'm going to repeat it, thinking beyond borders. So that's basically what it is. And like we said, the reason they're more important, we talked about COVID, we talked about the changing the changing landscape as per the world of work and all that. And the kind of leader that you would need for that kind of thing is one that is not held back or constrained or restrained by the regular traditional constraints. That's the idea.
All right, so we'll go on this quick break. I've got some more questions for you this evening. You're listening to 91.3 Lagos Talks. This is The Office, and we have one of our esteemed guests with us. Is MCIPM, Leslie George, the lead consultant, Horizon Boone Limited. We'll go for this quick break, and then we'll come back and push some more questions across to our guest this evening. So don't touch it. This is 91.3. You're listening to Lagos Talks.
Drama, suspense, emotions, the gang moments. Don't miss out on Nollywood movies and web series on YouTube with the YouTube buffet plan from MTN. Enjoy 10 hours of Nollywood content in a sharply dial star 312. The YouTube buffet plan from MTN and start enjoying YouTube made for you. And now, this is about to be absolutely amazing. It's the house of drink and lots of prizes to be won. From 29th to the 31st of March, have fun with Table of Mascot live. Venue with the State Union Bank Sports Club. 10,000 naira flat. Family of 4, then 5,000 naira. Tickets available restaurant the best corporate guests to arrive and free popcorn and everything else. For sponsorship and inquiries, please call 090-439-820-88. The drama, the suspense, the emotions, the gang moments. Don't miss out on Hollywood movies and web series. MTN. You can enjoy 10 hours of dial star 312 star 800 hash to activate the YouTube buffet plan from MTN and start enjoying YouTube made for you. This conversation.
Okay, welcome back. You're listening to 91.3 Lagos Talks. My name is Wale, and I have Mr. Leslie George with me as my guest on The Office this evening as a lead consultant, Horizon Boone Limited. And we have been talking about leadership. Let's reimagine it, leading in a boundaryless world. And before we went on that break, we had Mr. George talk about characteristics of leaders who thrive in this sort of setup. Now, Mr. George, you've had 19 years and counting in this business. I'm sure you have a lot of things to say in regards to instances, perhaps your experiences. So could you share examples or anecdotes, illustrating successful instances of boundaryless or borderless leadership in, our diverse global setting as we speak? And what would you say are ways that leaders like this can foster collaboration and innovation across geographical, cultural, and organizational boundaries?
Oh, okay. To be clear, right now, the majority of organizations are boundaryless. The majority, and if there is a learning organization, okay, that's an organization, an organization with a structure that places a high emphasis on using new data and information to positively change a company's existing approach, which is what we describe as the learning organization. If there is a modular organization, which is an organization that can outsource a lot of its functions except for its core competences so that it can function better, or you are a network organization which breaks down both internal and external barriers, which means that they're going to be subverting traditional task assignments and making strategic alliances with outside companies, or if you are what we describe as a virtual organization, okay, which I'm sure you understand, all the leaders in this kind of organizations are boundaryless leaders. These organizations are basically the kind of organizations you have today. Take, for example, the modular organization, where organizations are thinking, instead of us spending our time dealing with functions that we can actually, what's the word? We can actually outsource, so we can focus on the things that are most important to us. A lot of organizations are like that today. So when we talk about, what are the examples of boundaryless organizations? They are a plethora. That's what I'm saying. There's so many of them. Actually, I'm saying so many of them. Every organization is playing on the global stage, which is where the problem is right now. You can't actually afford to not be a boundaryless leader or a boundaryless organization. So learning organizations are boundaryless. Any kind of leader within that organization is what we would describe as a boundaryless leader. Any kind of organization, in a modular organization, is what we'll describe as a boundary. So you name them, whether they're Nigerian companies, whether they're African companies, whether they're companies in America, in Europe, whatever it is, in Asia. There's too many to actually mention. That's where the thing is, because that's what we're doing now. That's what everyone is doing now.
Right. So let me quickly ask you, what would you say, to what degree do you think culture has a role to play in the establishment of boundaryless leadership in Nigeria? There's this stereotype, or is it notion that if you're not here physically with me, I don't believe they are being productive. You understand?
Okay.
That's an orientation that I believe a lot of people have at different levels, at even the level of the entrepreneur who runs the business, his management staff, even the employees, So post-COVID, people saw that people could work, without boundaries, but there is still that, old culture that you have to be here physically. And even, it's not just in Nigeria, even abroad, I think with X or so, there was a time that Elon Musk was asking the staff to come physically to the head office. So what do you have to say about that transition? How is it going?
Yeah, okay, I was saying that with Tesla, that's basically it. People like Elon Musk, they believe that it's not just the fact that you can work from anywhere. They want it to be that you're working together with other people in a physical space, because then collaboration is better fostered. And that's the thinking. Now, a lot of organizations in Nigeria, you have to see that there's a problem in this regard. The problem would be, we have an office building. We actually built it, or we have leased it for 10 years. Nobody's showing up. We have to have people in that place so that we don't feel like we've wasted.
Is that the most important thing, or is it productivity? If you're going to choose between occupying that building you have leased as an entrepreneur. And
no, I'll just give you an example of one of the reasons a lot of organizations are doing that. You understand? Imagine that. But then some organizations have actually closed their offices and said, everybody virtual, go home, because of the nature of their business. Now, it has to be dependent, or it is dependent on the nature of their business. Some organizations know that, if we're a marketing organization, everybody can go home. You understand? If we're in sales, if we're in consulting, everybody can go home. But if we're in something else that requires everybody to be here, we can't actually be tell ourselves that we're a virtual organization, or we are leaning heavily on the virtual whatever. So in organizations in Nigeria, there's a rethinking of it. There's a rethinking. Some are still saying, come back to work, because now we don't need to be away from work. But then there's a rethinking, and that rethinking is expanding. A lot of people are saying, this person can work from home. Let him work from home. Let him work from home 3 times a week. Let him work from home twice a week, whatever it is. But that conversation is ongoing. And a lot of organizations are still working out the kinks, because some people don't work well by themselves. And virtual teams have certain limitations that boots on the ground kind of teams, face-to-face kind of teams don't have. So that's something that we need to think about.
All right, so let's quickly speed things up because of our time. To talk about the challenges that leaders encounter. I mean, you mentioned, the type of organization or the type of business could pretty much inform the style of leadership. But what would you say are the challenges that leaders encounter when operating this style, this boundaryless context? What are the major challenges?
Yeah, the major challenges, for example, one of the things that you're thinking of is your organizational culture across borders. It's a problem. So you're going to have to ask the question, what exactly, how can we adapt to whatever is necessary to be done? You're thinking of policies that run across from, take for example, you work in Nigeria and then you move to somewhere in Europe, for example. Okay. Now, in that place that you're in, one of the things that you're going to have to deal with, how do we implement policies that are created with the Nigerian culture, the Nigerian environment, the Nigerian business environment in mind? How do we implement those kind of things across borders? Then another thing is, I mentioned earlier that a boundaryless leader is a 24/7 leader. So that in itself, just saying it tells you the kind of constraints that you're going to experience. And then, of course, thinking across borders, thinking task, thinking results, thinking such things. How do we regulate teams that are not on ground? How do we actually regulate the behavior of teams with regards to being productive, being efficient, being raising their level of competence across borders? A lot of those things are the things that leaders in this kind of organizations will have to think and rethink. So they're adapting to those constraints. They're adapting to them. And at the same time, they are adopting certain things that will help them scale those constraints.
Okay. All right. So finally, and I would love you to do this in less than 1 minute. How can leaders, aspiring leaders now, how can these sort of individuals develop the skills? Because I believe that you need to update your skill set if you want to thrive in this, post-COVID setup of globalized leadership. But what sort of skills are needed? How do they develop these skills and even the mindset to even survive or thrive in this sort of setup? And what role does continuous learning and adaptation play in this process?
Continuous learning is primary. Adaptability is primary. Understanding what you need to adopt and what you need to adapt to is primary. Understanding human behavior beyond just, this person works in this place. Understanding human behavior, how people think, and the kind of things that push people or motivate people, the kind of things that drive them, those kind of thinking, that kind of thinking. The leader has to be a critical thinker, a natural problem solver, and those kind of things are learned by actually engaging in what you describe as continuous learning. That's basically that.
All right, Leslie George, MCIPM. I wasn't expecting less. Thank you so much for doing this with us this evening. Maybe I'll continue reading out your profile so that we can go into 5:30 or something. But anyway, thank you so much for stopping by. It's been a pleasure doing this. I think we should do this at some other time, maybe like a part 2 to this conversation. It's an ongoing situation and we are just adapting and we're learning new things. So once again, Leslie George, MCIPM, thank you for being our guest this evening.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so that's about it on The Office this evening. It is proudly brought to you by the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria and Lagos Talks 91.3. My name is Kolawole Falodun. Up next is Critical Thinking. Of course, we've got a guest coming up much later in the evening. You're listening to 91.3. This is Lagos Talks.